an inhumane Rwanda act and deportations. It's not the first time we're here, and it's good to see so many people very early in the morning. It's not easy to get up and come here at this time. We're here again to say we will not let the government actually dehumanize people. We will not let the government divide us. We will not let the government to deport our friends and our neighbors. And we are here to say so loud and clear. No borders, no nations, no deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop deportations. No borders, no nations. Stop deportations. Thank you very much.
We know why we're here today. The announcement last week that the government was starting the raids, I think, has come as a huge, huge shock to many people. We've heard the rhetoric around Rwanda for a long, long time now, but to see the actions actually taking place and to see people literally being taken and picked up and taken into custody has been absolutely, absolutely shocking. Just to say a little bit about the work we do in North Derbyshire as a refugee support group and as an anti-racist campaigning organisation. We have in Chesterfield, we work very, very closely around one of our major hotels in Chesterfield, where we provide support for asylum seekers who are there. And Barbara, who's my comrade here, who does lots and lots of work around that, might want to say a word too about the work we do around that, and perhaps about some of the cases we've had, individual cases of people who've been picked up in the last week as well. So I think we're here to send a very, very strong message of no to deportation and no to the Rwanda scheme. And I think it's an important message, and I think we have to be very confident, actually, that the message we're putting out here has a real echo across society. Obviously, there are racists in British society, we know and understand that, but I think the issue of Rwanda and opposition to Rwanda opens up a space for anti-racists to argue very, very strongly against the whole way in which refugees are being treated, and I think we have to grasp that opportunity and really push that.
The Rwanda Deportation Act has been ruled unlawful by the British Supreme Court. It has been condemned by the United Nations, and it is immoral, it is inhumane, and it goes against international law. Not only that, but it is costing a lot of money that could have been used in other useful things. For example, in Sheffield, people go to food banks to get food. Why can the government not spend the money to support people who are working? Some people who are working are going are going to food banks to just feed their families. The train drivers are striking. Doctors and nurses are not being paid. Teachers are not being well paid. And they want to get rid of ordinary workers because they say there's no money. Why do you spend billions in a scheme that is a scam? We know that the scheme does not work. Australia has tried it. We know that it doesn't work. Every ordinary British person of goodwill knows that this scheme is a scam. It's also a political stunt. It's just being used for election purposes to say, look, we actually deported people. They are celebrating the voluntary departure of one person to Rwanda, one person has allegedly volunteered to go to Rwanda. I mean, do you spend millions and hundreds of millions just for one person to volunteer to go to Rwanda? I mean, does it make any sense? But the Rwanda deportation scam is part of the hostile immigration system. Most politicians and some people even within our sector will say the immigration system is broken. It is not broken. It is hostile by design. It is working the way it is designed to work. It's designed to be inhumane. It is designed to oppress people.
Yes.
It is designed to divide people.
Yes.
So you cannot say something that has been designed to work in a hostile way, in an inhumane way, and then the government claims is broken. It's not broken. And even if it was broken, if you are in government for 14 years and something is broken for 14 years and you can't fix it, you need to scrap it. If anybody here had a car or had a business or had something and it's broken for years, would you keep maintaining such a broken thing? So let's take them on their own act and it's broken. If it's broken, then scrap it. Don't keep keeping it and wasting money on it. Also, the Rwanda deportation plan is a test ground. What has been going on in the UK is that they test hostile policies on migrants and asylum seekers. They test the waters. If that works, then they use it on other people, other groups of people in the UK, including British people. We saw that in the Windrush scandal. We saw that people whose parents came here 50 years ago, 70 years ago, and who were born here, were being told they have to be deported to the Caribbean. They have never been to the Caribbean. Some of them have never been to the Caribbean. And what happens is because they test these policies on ordinary people. When they test them on asylum seekers, then they apply them on working people, on ordinary people who are powerless in the UK. And that is why we have to unite to oppose these hostile policies.
I am a lecturer at the university and I do research about the politics of asylum. So I've been researching the UK's border regime for about 18 years now. And at the start, when people were being dispersed those years ago to squalid housing, and the Home Office would change their numbers once a month so that we couldn't get them help or information, it seemed completely dystopian and like things couldn't possibly get any worse. But they have got worse and worse and worse in that time. And they've gotten worse because British politicians think that the British public is racist. They think that they can win more elections and get more power for themselves if they do more racist policies. And they think that we're racist and we want border policies that punish people even for arriving here to seek refuge. And they do all of these things in our name. So I think I'm here today, and I think we're all here today to say, not in my name.
Not in my name.
So we want to say to Rishi Sunak, don't say that anyone who arrives in a small boat is inadmissible for asylum. Don't say that in my name. Don't detain people in my name. Don't violate international law in my name. Don't deport people to Rwanda in my name. Because the British government thinks that we're all racists and we have to tell them that we're not. They think we want fascist policies and we're here to tell them that we don't. We know that the Rwanda plan won't work and people will carry on crossing the channel in small boats. But the Rwanda plan isn't bad because it won't stop channel crossings. It would still be evil if it worked. We know that it's going to be really, really expensive, as Sarli said a minute ago, and that they'll do it even in a cost of living crisis because there's always money for racism. But it's not bad because it's expensive. It would be bad if it was cheap. Judges in the Supreme Court have said that Rwanda is not a safe country to send people to, but the policy isn't bad because it's this particular country, Rwanda, that people are going to be sent to. If it wasn't Rwanda, or if Rwanda fails, they'll try another country. It's bad because it treats people like they're not even human beings. It treats them as though they're cargo or animals or waste products that can just be transported somewhere around the world at the government's whims. And the extension of that logic is that it denies human beings their human rights. The human rights conventions were devised exactly to stop fascist governments from doing evil and cruel things without accountability. But the UK government is carrying on with the Rwanda plan because they have permission to treat people as though they don't have human rights, as though they're not human beings at all, because who is stopping them? The EU seem to be cheering them on. More countries want to join in with this great idea. So we have to be their conscience and we have to say, not in our name. We'll not give you permission to do this and say that it's in our name. I think the policy is dehumanising, it's racist, and it has to be resisted, and it is being here today and all over the country. And the only way to stop it now, as well as protesting, is through non-compliance, because they need 1 million people doing tiny tasks to make this evil plan happen. So they're going to need people like civil servants in this building, they're going to need judges, they're going to need government lawyers and immigration enforcement officers, they need people working in detention centres, they need people working for airlines, they need pilots, they need all of these plans with all of these people to make this happen, because we all know Rishi Sunak's not going to be helping with any of the work, the dirty, dirty work. So we're here today to say that to the people in this building, wake up and don't comply with the Rwanda plan.
From Lucy and also from the Palestine camp, as well as from the university. We work closely with the Migration Research Group at the university, which Lucy is a strong member of. And I think that we do require academics to also be part of the struggle, because we need to frame some of these issues in a way that can be understood and also can make a lot of sense. So the research that they do is a very useful tool for our advocacy and also for political education. Because without political education, people will think that the struggle for Palestine or the struggle of the workers or the labor crisis or the climate crisis is not linked to migration crisis. But all these crises are linked together. They are linked together by a web of oppressive capitalist system that operates around the world with injustices, especially to the global south, that cause a lot of movement, because there is a lot of wars created, a lot of deaths, a lot of poverty created, and exploitation, and therefore people move. And what we say usually is that people have the right to move, and also people have the right to stay where they are. It's not one or the other. So thank you very much, Lucy. We'll hear from the next speaker, who is our friend Mark Carr, who is a writer and journalist. He's the author of the book Fortress Europe, the inside story of how migrants are being, trafficked around Europe and used. So over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been over 2 years since the British government first announced it was going to send asylum seekers arriving in the UK from France to Rwanda. The government did this in response to political pressure from the right wing of a very right-wing Conservative party, and from even more right-wing pressures from outside the party. From the very beginning, there was a contradiction within this policy that has never been resolved. On one hand, it was presented to the public as a humanitarian measure to combat evil people smugglers. At the same time, it was a deterrent that would deter undocumented migrants from crossing the channel. So was it humanitarian, or was it a deterrent, or was it a humanitarian deterrent? No one knew. And the message proclaimed again and again was this: if asylum seekers come to the UK illegally, they will end up in Rwanda, because Rwanda is a safe country, even though the Home Office itself has said that it isn't. None of this changed the message: stop the boats. Stop the boats became a kind of mantra that was devoid from any practical or logical understanding of what the policy could actually do. If lawyers or refugee organisations criticised or opposed this policy, they were leftists, woke communists or bleeding heart liberals. And if international courts opposed it, they were foreigners telling us what to do. And if they said that the UK wasn't living up to its agreements, then the UK government threatened to leave these agreements and arrangements. Never mind that in all these 2 years, no one has produced a shred of evidence that this policy will work even on its own cruel terms. No one has explained how people prepared to risk death by crossing the channel will be deterred from coming to the UK to seek asylum by the threat of sending them to Rwanda. At the moment, the government plans to send up to 5,700 people to Rwanda. Between 2015 and 2018, the Israeli government sent 4,000 migrants to Rwanda and Uganda in a similar scheme. By 2018, nearly all of them had left. So if these men and women could not build new lives in Rwanda, what makes the UK government believe that the people we send from here will be able to do it? Is Rwanda worse than the prospect of drowning? The government doesn't say. And so we've had 2 years of this dystopian hellscape, 2 years of a policy that has been criticised by the UN, the ECHR, Human Rights Watch, the Church of England, and every single human rights, migrant and refugee organisation in the country. So why has this happened? What does the government want to achieve by it? Firstly, look at the context. One of the promises made during the Brexit referendum was that the UK would cut migration. Instead, migration went up. The UK public was told that we could control our borders if we left the European Union. Then the Channel boat crossings began, showing that we couldn't. And meanwhile, everything else that was promised in 2016 has turned to dust. But there was one thing this government could do. It could be tough. Or to put it another way, it could be cruel. And that's why we got Rwanda. This policy made it possible for the Tory party in this government to attack the people the Tory party always attacks. Migrants, foreign courts, woke lawyers, human rights gone mad, so-called refugees. And that's why they've been doing what they're doing for 2 years. But it hasn't actually worked out for them. They didn't make themselves popular, except with the racist right and the maniac wing of their own party. No matter how much they talked about flying people to Rwanda, no matter how many threats they made, no matter how many prime ministers and home secretaries came and went, they kept talking about Rwanda and promising to stop the boats, and it hasn't made them popular. And all that time they've continued to drop in the polls, and living standards continued to fall, and prices and energy bills went up, and they continued to talk about migrants taking our jobs even if they weren't working because they weren't allowed to. And then they said, look at the asylum seekers staying in luxury hotels where your children don't have a house, but don't worry, we'll send them to Rwanda. Careers were built and ruined on this. I'll send them to Rwanda, said Johnson and Patel. No, I will, said Braverman. No, me, said Cleverly, says Gullis, says Anderson, says Sunak, says every member of this detestable zombie government as it staggers on towards oblivion. And now they've done it. Yes, on April the 30th, they sent an asylum seeker to Rwanda. They paid him £3,000 to go there. That's on top of the close to £500 million they've already spent. And that includes £165,000 that James Cleverly spent to fly himself to Rwanda last year. And now asylum seekers are being forced into hiding to escape the roundup. And meanwhile, the asylum backlog stands now at 90,000 cases. This is not the way to manage an asylum system. It's not the way to run a country. It's not the way any country should want to be run. It is not moral. It is not good. It is not just. This policy shames us all. It twists the meaning out of words and invites us to become as cruel and immoral as this government already is. Boris Johnson once said that sending people to Rwanda was the moral thing to do, as if he would know what that word ever meant. There is nothing moral about Johnson and nothing moral about this policy. It stank then, and it stinks now, and we need it stopped. We need safe routes. We need a fully supported asylum system that can fairly assess people's claims without punishing them for making them in the first place. We need an end to detention, to punishment, to deportations and cruelty. We need fairness, we need justice, we need this government gone, and we need this policy to go with it. No to deportations, no to detention. Asylum seekers are not criminals, and we must not allow this government to be as bad as this government would like it to be. Thank you.
Okay, so now I've got a message from the Palestine Solidarity camp, which is not just a camp of University of Sheffield students in solidarity with people in Palestine. It's about our university being the university in the UK that receives the most defence funding, that is making parts for planes that are being used now in Gaza and many such evils. Shame. Okay, so this is their statement. Good morning, folks. We're here today from the Sheffield Encampment for Gaza at the University of Sheffield, now in its 8th day. We want to assert our solidarity with SYMAAG and the Sheffield-based groups campaigning and organising against the inhumane and illegal Rwanda bill that our government is now implementing. We also further challenge the government's increasing persecution of Syrian, Turkish, Kurdish and Palestinian refugees, clearly demonstrating their disdain towards racialised communities, and we do not accept this. Many of the people who've had to leave their homes due to conflict, due to environmental destruction, due to foreign invasion, are refugees today because of this country's foreign policy and weapons sales to imperialist regimes. Their close military links with imperial states such as Israel and the USA are widely known, and we recognise and note that our universities are complicit in aiding the British government to fulfil their ambitions of imperialistic domination. This is what results in the displacement and forceful expulsion of people of the global majority, who are once again racialised and criminalised in the heart of this empire. Our own university student, Saeed Zanin, was subjected to life-threatening delays while in Gaza, while the university and British government mulled our bureaucratic requirements. We don't accept this, and will not accept this. We'll fight for the rights of each and every migrant to lead a life of dignity wherever they might be. As members of the University of Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam University, we recognise the extraordinarily integral role that international students and displaced peoples have historically played in our societies. As members of diverse communities, we need some punctuation here if I was marking this essay, just to breathe. As members of diverse communities. Their economic contribution is just one aspect. More importantly, diversity in our knowledges has empowered us and made our movements stronger. And diversity in our culture has made us more resilient and inclusive. We stand with all migrants and appreciate their contribution in our movements. We note the government and Rishi Sunak's attack on the freedom of political expression of migrants, trying to control what students, and especially international students, can do and say on our campuses, what international staff can research, and so on. This is shameful and an attack on our academic freedom and freedom of speech. No person's residential rights should be impacted by their research and speech. As members invested in securing free Palestine, we note that the government's hostile environment policies will not only target migrants, but all of our rights, and we stand in indefinite opposition to this government's policies and call for a revocation of the Rwanda Act. In addition, we call for family reunification visas for Palestinians who are fleeing genocide, which is supported by the government and the University of Sheffield. We stand together with all migrants and note that our liberation is tied together.
Lucy, thank you very much. And I think that the issue of safe routes, which the government always talks about, that people have to arrive on safe routes, there is no such thing as safe routes. If there was a fire in the house and you're in the house, would you be looking, for a Mercedes to leave the premises? You will have to get out of the house by all means, through any means. Because people fleeing persecution and people fleeing all these dangers have no time to look for safe roads, because the safe roads don't exist. The safe road is death. There is no such thing as safe roads. The other thing is that deportations don't work, and we know that. In 2021, the government hired 74 charter flights, and they deported about 1,800 people in those flights. In one flight, they deported one person to Poland. In another flight, they deported 6 people to the Caribbean. In several flights, they deported less than 5 people or even 1 person to a certain country. The question to ask, how much did that cost? How much carbon footprint did that create, those flights? And do British people want 1 person to be deported to Poland, or they want good schools, they want good NHS that is working, they want things that are working? They are not interested in deporting 1 person to Poland. This is not what the British people are interested in. They are not worried about these things. It's the government that is creating them. So we need to keep not only fighting against deportations to Rwanda, but we need to keep fighting against the hostile environment in general. Because the hostile environment is what creates all these things. We move on to the next speaker, and it's Hilary from Palestine Solidarity. Hilary wants to speak because she wants to leave soon. We stand in solidarity with Palestine. Rwanda stands in solidarity with Israel, because Rwanda already had a contract for Israel to deport people to Rwanda. So you can see the connection between Rwanda and Palestine. If someone has a contract with Israel for people to be deported, then they will also be supporting the genocide in Palestine. So all these issues are connected, but they try to hide it from us. Thank you. Welcome, Hilary.
Thanks. Just before I start speaking about Palestine, I want to just say a few words about another aspect of our wonderful sanctuary movement in Sheffield. I'm proud to be a volunteer with Lesbian Asylum Support Sheffield, LAS, which supports LGBT and queer women who are seeking asylum or in the asylum system or are refugees. And some members of LAS are bravely here today as part of this movement. One of the ironies of the situation is that the very week that the Rwanda bill was first, I don't know what the word is, was first in Parliament, a new member of LAS joined who was from Rwanda, and the Home Office subsequently granted asylum, granted refugee status to this member on the grounds that on the grounds of her sexuality, she would be at risk of persecution in Rwanda. So what sort of irony is that? That on the one hand, we are saying, the government is saying that Rwanda is a safe place for people to go, and yet on the other hand, this same Home Office is granting refugee status to somebody in Sheffield. I just wanted to say a little bit about the Palestine Solidarity movement in Sheffield. I know that many of you have been on the demonstrations, the protests, the vigils, the actions that we have been particularly taking, sometimes almost every day over the last 6 months. But the Palestine Solidarity movement has been going in Sheffield, has been active in Sheffield for the last 40 years, and will continue until we see the liberation of the Palestinian people and justice for the Palestinian people. Untold numbers of Palestinians have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. We will never know many of their names, but we know that the fight for liberation is the same fight that we are fighting here, for justice for anybody who needs to seek safety, who needs a safe place. And also, as Sarli has said, for people who want to stay in their own home. I just want to mention somebody that who's known to many of you, Shad Abu Salama, a Palestinian from Jabalia camp in the north of the Gaza Strip, who gained a PhD here at Hallam University and subsequently briefly was a lecturer at Hallam University. And what a joy for us, what a privilege for us that such an amazing human being, talented academic, freedom fighter, was here at Hallam University. However, her career here was very short because of an unrelenting campaign of false claims of anti-Semitism against her. They attempted to dehumanize her as they attempt to dehumanize all Palestinians. She did not allow that to happen, and we will not allow that to happen in her name. So the fight for liberation for the Palestinian people will carry on here in Sheffield, and we're really proud about the student encampment and members of the community. The encampment is not just about Sheffield students, it's about our city and the sort of city that we want to live in and the sort of universities we want in our city. So I'd encourage anybody to go up to the encampment, to talk to the students and staff there about what they're doing and why, which has already been explained so well by Lucy. Just one thing that Shad is also campaigning about is there is a campaign for a Palestinian family reunification scheme, so that Palestinians living here, and there are many of them here in this city, who have family in Gaza, currently facing genocide, facing famine, so that their families can come and join them, just as the family reunification scheme was set up 2 years ago, I think, for Ukraine. The petition for that, the government has said they have no plans to introduce such a scheme, and the petition has now reached well over 100,000. So the scheme is going to be debated in Parliament next week. I don't think any of us have any illusions. This government is determined to dehumanise Palestinians, to see them as the voices of terror rather than what we all know, which is that it's the Israeli apartheid and genocidal state that are really the voices of terror. So in Sheffield, we need to carry on campaigning. We need to carry on being on the streets. This weekend, we have our Nakba Day March, which will be starting at Hunters Bar at Encliffe Park at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning, and it will be great to see as many of you as possible here. But in the meantime, we stand in solidarity with all those fighting the Rwanda bill and fighting the hostile environment, fighting the dehumanisation of peoples everywhere. Thank you.
Melinda is from City of Sanctuary and also Leave the Ban campaign and one of our strong comrades. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello everyone. I'm sorry that I didn't have time to prepare any speech, but I really want to share with you what I really have in my heart and what is in all your heart, because this is the truth. It's not only our truth, this is the truth. The Rwanda Act is an illegal act under international and humanitarian law. We are seeing the impact that this is having in all people, our brothers and sisters here in Sheffield and across the UK. When we talk about what this environment is doing in people's lives, we can see not only about number, that this is what this government is trying to do, the deshumanization of human beings. We are seeing their face, we are seeing their families, we are seeing their story and what they are going through. And this is what this government is trying to do. I am working for the charity sector, and sometimes people say, and the policy in the UK say, that we cannot be political. But when they say that, I would reply, I cannot tell everybody no vote for the Conservative Party, but I can tell everybody, don't vote for a party who don't respect human rights, because this is what they are doing. I cannot keep quiet, and we cannot keep quiet when we are seeing our brothers and sisters suffering. And this is the reality. For this reason we are here today. We are here today in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are going through this hostile environment. Because it didn't start today, as some of you had already mentioned. It started not even with Theresa May in 2014. It started a long time ago. And the message that they want to send is that you are not welcome here. But you know what is the message that we are sending to our brothers and sisters? We love you, we see you, we support you, and we recognize you, and you are welcome here. Only one last thing. This demo is only the start, and we want to send this clear message to our government and to everyone, including the people who are here today. We are not going to stop. This is an illegal act, and we will keep fighting together in solidarity until we revoke this law. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Refugees are welcome here. Refugees are welcome here. Repeat after me. Refugees are welcome here.
Refugees are welcome here.
Migrants are welcome here.
Migrants are welcome here.
Everybody is welcome here.
Everybody is welcome here.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is from the Industrial Workers Union of the World. It's one of the unions that we work with here in Sheffield. Over to you, comrade.
Thank you. Hi. So I'm Alex from Sheffield IWW, and I want to talk about why this is a union issue and why we're specifically the industrial workers of the world, and why whenever we try and remember what our own acronym is, we always assume there's international in there, but there's not. But this is why it is both a world, an international issue, and a union issue. So we've all been speculating about what the government is trying to achieve by this. We've been talking about how it's going to fail on its own terms, and is it meant to stop the boats? Is it meant to deter something? Is there like a business model they want to break? Is it just to keep them out? Or we can't work out what they want to do. We don't even know if they know what they want to do. But I keep thinking of this phrase I heard. It's from like systems theory, and it's the purpose of a system is what it does. We don't need to speculate about what they think they're trying to do or if it's going to succeed on its own terms. The purpose of a system is what it does. And if you're wondering why both parties have spent most of this century, as long as I've been following the issue, probably like a century before that, alternating, taking turns to panic and crack down on asylum seekers, and yet there are always people here for them to panic and crack down on. This clicked for me in, I think, 2008. There was a collective grievance, I can't remember the details, raised by cleaners at SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies in London. And the first thing this famously progressive university did was call immigration services. We don't know what they're actually trying to achieve, but we know what the system does. It's workplace discipline. We know who's picking our fruit, we know who's picking our Amazon orders, who's bringing our takeaways, who's getting up at 5 to clean our workplaces and be gone before we've even arrived. We know what happens if someone's visa is tied to their employment and they ask for a with inflation pay rise, or a safer workplace, or better habitation, or less unpaid overtime, or slightly less sexual harassment. Those of us who visited immigration removal centres might know what people get paid per hour for work they do there. When, like, last time I went to one, people were getting paid £1 an hour. And I think the company that ran it, Mighty, something like 55% of their profits that they made from running it came from the discrepancy between what they were paying people and minimum wage. Some of us, the IWW is affiliated to the Pan-African Workers Movement, and you might see some of the kinds of casework that people from that organisation bring in. Abusing people's rights doesn't keep them out of the country. It keeps them in the country, but without rights. Maybe this is intentional, maybe it's just a side effect that happens to benefit certain people in power. I don't care which it is, the system is what it does. You're going to be told that new arrivals are taking jobs. You're also going to be told that they're not working. You might be told both of them in the same sentence if you're lucky. But basically the message you're going to get is that people come here and work here and undercut pay and conditions because they're willing to work harder for less. And yeah, from a union perspective, let me tell you how you get yourself undercut. You get yourself undercut by leaving somebody behind. The moment you win a pay rise for yourself, but not for your co-worker becomes capital's absolute favourite kind of employee, which is a cheap one. The moment you win equal pay and conditions for those cheap new workers that they got in, there are no longer cheap workers. Performative cruelty to migrants is partly there just to be cruel. It's partly there as an electoral strategy. It's partly there just as sort of a kind of confused flailing around. It's partly there to specifically discipline migrant labour and keep their pay and conditions down. But, I mean, one of our mottos in the IWW is that an injury to one is an injury to all. That's not just a moral principle, it's an observation. Legislation designed to injure one helps keep all pay and conditions down. Whether this is intentional, I don't know, but the system is what it does. So to wrap up, I hope I'm not going to be I'm not the one here who's said we've got a moral duty to protect migrants from all these petty, racist sadistics that this government and probably the next government will subject them to. But we do have to see. When we owe people solidarity, we owe solidarity on a moral level. But the thing with solidarity isn't just a moral issue, and solidarity isn't a sacrifice. Solidarity is also a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, comrade. Thank you very much. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Refugees are welcome here. Say it loud. Refugees are welcome here. Thank you very much. We continue listening to all the wonderful speeches. There are a lot of people, but we still have some time. Thank you very much. The next speaker is one of our colleagues, Eve. She's from the Voice of the Voiceless Immigration Detainees, Yorkshire. The short form is VVIDY. And she helped prepare for today. She did a lot of work to support prepare for today. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you, Sarli, and thank you to everyone today that has come down and supported this demonstration. My name is Eve, and I'm speaking on behalf of VVIDY, which stands for the Voice of Voiceless Immigration Detainees Yorkshire. Organising this demonstration with Solidarity Knows No Borders Yorkshire has proven to me again that power and solidarity exist within our communities and in this country, despite the rhetoric of this government. We hold the power of resistance, and that is something that our government cannot take away from us, no matter what bills they pass. What we've organised in this last week, and everyone who is here today, demonstrates our strength, and this is something that we have to maintain in this dark political landscape that we are currently finding ourselves in. I first want to shout shame to the people who support this government, who work for this government and are elected MPs. They enable the abuse of human rights in this country. The Rwanda bill has been ruled unlawful by the UK Supreme Court, condemned by international bodies. This means it is illegal. It breaks laws that are meant to protect us. In order to pass this, the government's Safety of Rwanda bill acts as a legal loophole to force judges to accept courts and Rwanda as a safe country to deport migrants to. The government has legislated itself outside of the facts. Rwanda is not a safe country. The bill removes the UK of its obligation to offer migrants sanctuary, instead processing people's claims whilst being held in a country that we have very limited and not positive information of their asylum processes and with no guarantee to the UK. The bill sets a very, very dangerous precedent in this country that we are legally able to remove human rights and safeguards that people are entitled to. That is not a democratic country. Unfortunately, in this global, neo-colonial, imperialist, capitalist system our world is built upon, the UK can still claim itself as a democracy. These lies are only possible when colonisers go unchallenged, which is what we are here to do today, to challenge them. We do not agree with this country's abuses. The continuation of discrimination and oppression is dependent on the acceptance of their divide and rule policies, a policy that has been used by colonisers since colonisation began to create division between us, the people. They draw borders, they tell us where we don't belong, they weaponise the beautiful, diverse differences that we have as humans. By blaming someone who wasn't born here for our struggles, the blame is refocused on where it should belong, on those in power, on those in government, and for creating and maintaining a system that serves the interests of only a few, namely the rich. We are all just people who have moved at some point in our history, for whatever reason that may be. It is our right as humans to create homes across this planet. It is not for some politician to decide who is worthy or who is deserving of living in a country and migrating. It is our human right. I completed a degree here in politics in Sheffield, and I wrote my dissertation on the impact of detention on detained migrants here in the UK. The UK, as other people have mentioned, has always had a system of detention for migrants, one that is inhumane, cruel and detrimental to those kept against their will. Our migration system creates a second-class citizenship, so to speak, where people who are not a British citizen are not entitled to the same rights as those who were born here. Despite this and the worsening trajectory of detention in this country, most people are unaware of this aspect of the hostile environment and what happens there. I will not speak for those who are detained, but I can give testimony to the accounts that I researched so we can try and imagine what has actually happened before us in this country. In my analysis of these testimonies, the main themes that I found from the experience of detention in the UK were torture, trauma, suffering, pain, fear, punishment and death. Those are not light words, and that is the experience of people who are held in detention, which is what Rwanda is going to do to people. We need to hear these words. Detention strips people of their dignity, of their freedom and their ability to live a healthy life, physically and mentally. Detention facilities in this country breach vast laws for their safety. Many do not have fire safety regulations, including sprinklers. Facilities are inadequate. Detained migrants do not have sufficient bedding or food. Access to legal aid in detention, healthcare, medication, it is practically non-existent, and abuse and neglect from staff is commonplace. The quality of life in these facilities is extremely low, and detained migrants' physical and especially mental health is abused by detention practices. Most held in detention do not know when or if they will be released. Detention practices are not just in these holding facilities. There are people who are kept in hotels, who are tagged or face some other form of surveillance and restrictions on their freedom simply for moving here from another country. This is cruel and inhumane. The huge economic side that we have mentioned today to detention for the aims of profit, for paying private companies millions of pounds to benefit the shareholders, many of those who are in government, is a clear incentive for oppression, and is the case with all forms of discrimination for those who hold power. Whilst writing my dissertation, I had to constantly add new developments to the UK's abhorrent practices against migrants. Policies like the VVIDY Stockholm that we have opposed, and now the Rwanda bill. I did not want to believe that that would be the reality today in this country, but it is one where we would rather punish migrants and abuse them rather than those in power. The Rwanda bill increases, strengthens and facilitates detention practices. People are being detained as we stand here today, being held against their will and no idea if they will remain in the UK or see their home again. Our resistance is working. People are being protected from detention and raids, or are being accompanied to come sign here at the Home Office across this country. But it cannot be enough whilst this law remains in place. We have to petition this government, we have to take radical action to revoke this bill and support the human rights of people, of all people who are not just British citizens. We must end the hostile environment. We must dismantle this neo-colonial system that they've established to serve their interest, until every single human being can exist where they want to, without persecution, without fear and oppression. Thank you for listening to me today, and please join me as we shout, no borders, no nations, stop deportations. No borders, no nations, stop deportations.
Thank you very much, thank you.
I'd like to first point out that there are many who would want to be here. There's people, asylum seekers, there's refugees, but standing over here, coming closer to what I refer to as the heart of darkness right there behind you is not an easy task, even for me. I can be in the 8 p.m., 9 p.m. walking by. It's not an easy thing walking back past this building. You can feel the stress, you can feel the heart racing, and especially for people who walked into that building, it's not an easy experience. And I just like the whole point why I'm here and why I'm speaking is I've heard all these amazing speakers talking about the Rwanda plan. I can't even think about adding anything to it, but just like to point out that even though it's not working, even though it's a complete waste of money, even though rather than, I'm with Lift the Ban over here. We're fighting, trying to get people to work. We're trying to get asylum seekers the right to work so they can properly integrate, so they can get on with their lives. Now we're busy fighting this, which is a complete farce if you just get into it. Even though it's not working politically, even though it's not working financially, but it's working on the people. It's affecting people's mental health, people who are already mentally degraded. And unfortunately, it's just another cog of the machinery that is designed to degrade people's mental health. I'm a trustee in an organisation called Time to Be Out. We help asylum seekers from the LGBT community. Our sister's organisation, LAS, as well, can actually point out as well. I can imagine your messages, I can imagine what's going on in your inbox, I can see the messages you keep receiving the past 2 days. So really hope for everybody here once you leave, just to check on people, make sure everybody's all right, just tell them that this is not working, and we know it's not going to work. And it's just designed to basically destroy your mental health, or whatever remains of it. Finally, again, I'd like to thank you for coming over today. And even if nothing happens today, even if you guys have not done anything, I've been looking around and I've been seeing a lot of people who've been walking in there, coming over to sign in, to check in with the Home Office. I've been seeing the faces. A lot of the people appreciate your support. I've been seeing a lot of the people who've been walking in there through that door right over there, who really appreciate seeing people from the community, people standing in solidarity with them. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here.
and thank you to everyone who's organised this and for everyone who's come to this event. It is so impressive to see so many people. At one point, probably about an hour ago, I counted 82 people here. It became much larger. It became much larger. Those are huge numbers, and the people in that building will notice that we are here and we are saying loud and we are saying clear that we do not accept the policies. And that building is not just a building which is doing a bureaucratic job of dehumanising people. It is designing the policies that dehumanise people. There are people in there doing that work, building the strategy, building the policies, passing them to the politicians, and they will be noticing that we are out here in large numbers. And we've talked about dehumanisation, we've talked about the way in which people seeking asylum are stripped of their dignity, treated with cruelty, made to suffer. That is dehumanising. But we, those who are not being subjected to that, people like myself, are also being treated to that process of dehumanising. We have to be dehumanised in order that we do not resist, in order that we allow it to go ahead. And it's a process which is occurring with greater and greater ferocity and force. When Alan Kurdi was washed up on the beach in Greece, I think it was 2015, there was a massive reaction. People were shocked by the fact that refugees were being washed up on the beaches. I remember as a kid, now this is going to date me, I remember as a kid collecting milk bottle tops for a program called Blue Peter. We collected milk bottle tops in order to raise money to support Vietnamese boat people. That was a kind of means by which our humanity towards others was being recognised, and it's being taken away. There are lies being told systemically and completely all of the time by our governments. Total lies. We're told that to be against the genocide of people in Gaza, the killing, the mass slaughter of children in Gaza, is to be anti-Semitic. We're told that Rwanda is a safe country. Rwanda is a safe country. That's what we're told. It doesn't matter whether it's a safe country or not. It's been determined that it's a safe country. Now let's be clear. This is not anything against the people of Rwanda, but that country is set in an area of massive conflict. The conflict is as a consequence of colonialism, a consequence of imperialism, it's a consequence of needing resources, and people are being genocided continuously. In Sudan, 1.4 million people have been moved across the border into Chad, and will have to move further away. In the Congo, rape is a systemic part of the way in which the conflict is being fought, and that conflict is being funded from Rwanda, probably with some of the £250 million which the British government have given to Rwanda, with no detainees being sent so far. So I just want to say that we have to be really aware of all of that. And I want to finish by just talking about some words which a revolutionary black Marxist, Robin D.G. Kelley, spoke recently, which really spoke to me, and it spoke to what I think we've got here. When we talk about hope, we don't talk about wishful thinking. We talk about determination. We are determined to stop this policy. That has to be our hope. When we talk about pessimism, it is so frightening to see the way in which people are being treated around the world. But our pessimism has to be revolutionary pessimism. The pessimism that recognises the chaos and the catastrophe is such that we have no option but to act, and we will act. And I think what this demonstration here today shows is the way in which we have the numbers in this town to act with a ferocity and a determination that will be truly protective of people who are being rounded up and taken into asylum. So let's think about the way in which that bus in Peckham last week was surrounded, the tyres were let down, and every single person on that bus who was not that day taken to the VVIDY stop home to be dehumanised. That is the power that we have. That is the power that people in that building need to know that we have. So thank you everyone for coming here. No borders, no nations, no deportations.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope that is true, that most people here are part of that. If you're not, ask the people around you how to get involved. It's basically a WhatsApp call-out group. But yeah, to start, just to explain what we do. We're a community group that work to oppose the Home Office's basic terror tactic of immigration raids. There is a team in here on the second floor that go out at the crack of dawn and late at night, and they try and snatch people to take them into detention. That is one of their vehicles there. Well, the boot's open. We know from doing freedom of information requests that almost all of the raids they do not result in someone being detained. A really small fraction result in anyone being deported. It is basically to terrorise people. We know right now there's this big push to deport people, and that those proportions might be changing, but it is basically about putting people out on the streets to visibly bully members of our community, to play to the right wing. We try and oppose that by getting out into communities and telling people of their rights. One of the strange things about the wave of horrendous legislation that Tories have passed is that they've left the powers of immigration enforcement officers as quite limited. And so when they turn up, unless they have a warrant with someone's name on, or an authorization letter from the regional assistant director, whoever that is, or if it's a business which sells alcohol or late night food, then no one has to talk to them and they don't have to be let in. And they turn up in vans that look like police vans, and they have uniforms that look like they have power, and actually they don't. We can successfully resist them just by getting people to know that they can walk away. And it's also important to note, like the thing that happened in Peckham last week. There was a famous resistance in Glasgow where about 2,000 people turned out. And there was another one in Peckham last year. There's been a few around. They are wonderful displays of spontaneous community organising. But the most effective resistance always comes from the people that are oppressed, and letting people know that these goons they don't have the power to detain them is the most important thing we do. And we will never hear about how many people turn and walk away or shut the door and are safe because of that. And so what we do is we have these little flyers with this all succinctly summarised in, I think we have 26 languages, and we get out into communities that we know that experience a lot of raids and distribute this information. We also have a WhatsApp call-out group, which is for when there is raid activity, people being present, supporting the people who are at risk, filming what's going on, challenging the officers about what they're doing, and gathering a crowd we know can help force them to reconsider what they're doing. And there is, we've got a big community of people who respond to call-outs, and if you want to be in that group, hopefully someone sat next to you is already in it, so ask them. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much to the organisers. It's so great to be here. I was only asked to speak a few minutes ago, so I'm sorry if I didn't prepare anything, but as Melinda said before, it's actually quite nice to speak through your heart. As one of our friends has mentioned before, obviously for us trade unionists, the whole issue of welcoming the refugees is a very important one, and has to do with work, with basically being there at the forefront of creating a decent society. In addition to be a trade unionist, I'm also an archaeologist. And as an archaeologist, I know that in the history of humanity, mobility has always been very, very important in order to develop a decent society. I actually think that regardless of everything that one can think about migration policies and the Rwanda plan and so on, in general, in terms of who we are as humans, borders, country borders are a crime against humanity. We have humans, I have to say I don't like the expression migration. Homo sapiens is not naturally a migratory species, but the term is actually used to give a sense of something that cannot be changed. Actually, what humans do, and they have always done, is that they move around. And by moving around, we just create healthier societies. So basically, when you have people who move for whatever reason and wanted to cross borders and stop and create a barrier there, is just something that goes against the whole concept of humanity. But let's just talk for just 1 second about this whole issue of how they are presenting the people coming to this country. Recently, the government was up in arms, and also the media with them, about the number of people who have just come recently to this country. But who are these people? They are people who actually make our society better. Students who come to study here, people who work with the health system, in other social organizations. We actually need them. And when I say we need them, I don't only mean it in a kind of exploitative way that we need it because we didn't help for our society. Yes, we need that too, but we need them because creating a society which is diverse, culturally diverse, and diverse in terms of background and experience makes us better people. I have come to this country not because I desperately needed it. I was not escaping for war. I came here because I wanted a job here, because I wanted a different experience. And why not? I have tried all I could to give something to this country, and I have been given by this country. What is wrong with it? Okay? Is there something that we shouldn't be doing in the future? Just one final word about Rwanda. I mean, one thing that has been said is how cruel this strategy is. Let's be clear, the cruelty of the Rwanda plan is not a byproduct of some kind of bonkers policy. The cruelty of the Rwanda plan is a name in itself. I mean, one of the things that I have often thought about is what is fascism at the end of the day? I mean, how you define fascism? And I have come to the conclusion that fascism is the politics of hate. And these people who are in government now subscribe to it. And this is why we have to fight this in all ways we can. Because the fascism that they express is not an ideology that we can discuss about. It's an absolute crime. So thank you very much, everybody, for keeping together. I think we all feel sometimes lonely and isolated in our battles. By being together, expressing our solidarities, not only to our brothers who try to come to this country, but also among ourselves, we will be stronger and we can fight this kind of fascist attitudes that are taking place in this country today. Thank you very much.
Everybody, thanks for inviting me and thanks for coming and thanks also for the organizers. My name is Metin and I am from a Kurdish community. As you know, many refugees are coming to these countries are Kurdish people as well, and they're coming, from Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. We are mostly described as from this country, but we are Kurdish people from Kurdistan, such as Sarah, 7-year-old girl who died trying to cross the channel. So the root cause of this problem is the brutal regimes in Middle East or in around the world. The wars are happening, and it's happening with the help of these countries. So to solve this problem, we need to get united together, and we need to stand against these all brutal regimes. We need to stand against this Rwanda deal. We need to stop this. When we get together, we know we can do more things. 2 years ago, we get together with the TUC Trade Union Council in Sheffield, and we organized one of the biggest May Day protests in Sheffield. So let's get together, let's get united, and let's get united against this Rwanda deal. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I want to talk about practicalities, if that's all right. It's very, very important that you sow solidarity here and we take action. But I want to say what happened to me last Tuesday. On Sunday, I was thinking about what would happen. They'd announced that they were going to do raids. Tuesday morning, very early at 6, I got a text from one of our friends in the local hotel who's been now housed in a shared house in Coventry with a picture of the Sanford Holding Centre and the telephone number, and he'd been picked up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He's infamous in one way because the government have now used him and one other young man on a celebratory video on YouTube. His identity is for all to see, whereas the people picking him up were made anonymous. This young man's from Syria. He's been here since July 2022. The government have admitted it's unsafe for him to go back. And he's now in the detention centre in Colnbrook. Now, the importance is that we knew him. We knew him well. We'd been in the hotel. He was in Chesterfield College doing ESOL. I knew where he was living. I took him a bicycle. And therefore he trusted us with all his personal information, which was critical because immediately I called Care for Calais, gave them all the information that they needed: date of birth, KIU number, full name, his nationality, what language he spoke for the interpreter, and where he was. Now this is critical, and you need to make friends like this. At the moment, he is being represented by Duncan Lewis, the top immigration lawyer, and we hope that he'll be out on bail soon. He had done nothing wrong. If he'd arrived a month earlier, he would have been in the fast track and he would have had leave to remain. So please, please take practical action to make friends with individual refugees. It's extremely important they trust people. Now, think about who else you've got. We've got many Iranians. They attend church. We need to reach out to as far as possible. People have spoken about people being anti-racist. They are, but some people don't know what to do. So reach out to your churches and your mosques. They have individual refugees attending them. They must take action. They must make friends and be certain that they can speak out through their channels. Reach out to your local college. Our students are there. They're ESOL students. We have a stall weekly outside Chesterfield College and everybody comes to speak to us. So reach out. We need to make the movement much bigger. As you say, there's lots of anti-racists, but they may be fearful to attend rallies. They don't know what's happening, but we have to make a much wider network and make certain that every single refugee here has friends that they trust with their information who will take action immediately. It's extremely important. Thank you very much.
The second thing is, and this is where universities kind of come in, is we talk about universities, they're a place of research, but research for what? Because not all this research is equal. So when we talk about research, often we're talking about is like University of Sheffield, when we talk about drones. What do you mean by drones? Is the drones that are flying over the channel. It's not your DJI drones photography. No, these are commercial drones for commercial use, for companies like Elbit Systems. And then again, you get into Palestine, you go, these drones that are being used in the channel to see if migrants are coming across some boats, they're the same technology that's been used in Palestine to drop bombs on Palestinians. Our universities are being used as weapons of war, to develop technologies to suppress migrants, to technologies to internationally inflict pain and suffering on the global south at the hands of Western imperialism, right? Our universities are complicit in the broader industry and are complicit in war. And unless we, as civil society, unless we as students, unless we as, like, essentially just all of us, in all our institutions, start telling our institutions, start telling universities, telling schools, telling our healthcare system that we will not accept this system, it's fucked, right? We're not going to get anywhere. So, we need to get organised. Get organised in our workplaces, get organised in our schools, in our mosques, in our churches, in our gurdwaras. We need to get organised in our communities and fight this thing. That's the only way we're going to win.
Apologies, I've Yorkshire Migrant and Asylum, actually. And I just want to make 2 points. First, I want to kind of say out the great work being done by Asylum Aid in legally challenging this awful racist bill. They highlight that it is illegal and it is breaking international law by both instructing decision makers to rule, to ignore any human rights risks that are posed by their removal to Rwanda, and calling them to consider Rwanda a safe country and to not consider any risk of refoulement and being returned to the countries that they're fleeing, which is in clear breach of both the European Court of Human Rights Convention on Human Rights, and as the Supreme Court found, is illegal also by international customary law, which means even if they're not subscribed to any convention, it is still against international law. And final point, I also want to draw people's attention to a recent report by Refugee Council called Forced Adulthood, which talks about the way in which children who have come to the UK fleeing persecution are falsely being determined to be adults, largely based when they first arrive in the UK and are traumatised and often don't have access to their documents. Home Office officials just decide that they're clearly an adult and over 26, and then when they try to challenge that decision with migrant help and other services, they just refer back to that Home Office decision that was completely baseless. And that means they're denied access to education, they're with hotel maximisation, they're often housed in the same room as adults, and that's happening in Sheffield, in Rotherham, in Wakefield right now. And they're also put at far higher risk of the hostile environment. So I very much recommend people read that. And just finally, I would like to remind people, definitely, if you can sign up with Anti-Rage and the Volk, it's really important. Thank you.